Texas!
He's a 10.
I choose this family.
Hey guys, and welcome to episode 92 of 911 Lone Star Roundup. I'm one of your hosts, Katie, and with me are my lovely co-hosts, Grace.
Hi everyone.
And EJ.
Hey everybody.
Today we will be talking about season 4, episode 11 of Lone Star, titled Double Trouble. This episode was interesting to say the least.
Yep.
Many different interesting things.
Yeah, pretty much. But before we get into that, there's a few news related things that we really want to talk about. So first off, Lone Star won a GLAAD award for Outstanding Drama Series. Yay. That was so well deserved. It was so, and like I know that Ronan posted pictures of like him and Rafa. They look so cute. And like I saw like their like part of like their speech. I know Brian was there too, of course, and he like at the things he said, I was just like, it was incredible. And I know they had been nominated at least the last 2 years. And stuff, so it was like cool to see them like actually, finally win. And I don't know, like everyone's like Emmy, but I'm like, honestly, I think this is better.
Yeah,
it's like incredible. So congrats!
Yay! Congrats to cast and crew,
of course. And the second bit of news is that it was just announced that the season 4 finale for this season will be 2 hours long on May 16th.
I'm a little nervous.
I kind of saw this coming.
I'm
just because too. I was like, obviously we know they're gonna get 18 episodes, and then I knew that like, and I had a feeling just because I know they want like the shows like 911 and Lone Star to end probably on the same week. So I was like, I had a feeling for a while that was gonna happen.
Yeah.
And like, so this is our season 4 finale. It's everyone's, because I've been posting about it and people are like, but is this a series finale? And I'm like, no. I was like, don't worry, like Lone Star is like, they're like pretty likely to renew.
Right.
I imagine why not.
Yeah. Well, and in the last few seasons, both 911 and Lone Star usually are announced the day of their finale if they're renewed or not.
It's
so
usually a little bit before, a little bit after,
yeah. So like people are so worried, oh my god, they haven't said anything. What if they're canceling? I'm like, no, give it time. And if you look at the last few years,
I know,
don't freak out yet.
And I've been posting about it and people keep commenting, being like, oh my god, freaking out. Oh my god, is this like, wait, do you mean finale or series? I'm like, I never said anything like that. It's funny, and everyone's freaking out, and I'm like, oh, let's calm down. And I know the title for it has like wedding in it, so I'm like, I think the wedding's the finale.
Yeah. Well,
I feel like I said that way early on that I thought.
Oh, I did too. I was like, it's probably in the finale.
And if I'm not mistaken, episode 318 was on the 16th of May last year.
Oh, yeah, it was.
The finale is on the 16th of May of this year, so a year exactly to the date that TK and Carlos get engaged, they get married, is highly likely.
I know. I just think it's funny because I keep seeing this brought up that people keep being like, oh, like the whole season was 8 weeks. And I'm like, guys, you really got to throw out that 8-week thing. Like, it's getting kind of old. Like, just because in the premiere that Carlos mentioned, like, oh, we can get married in 8 weeks, doesn't mean that it was actually 8 weeks. I was like, there's no way in hell that this whole season was 8 weeks long. Like, no, it was still recovering.
Yes, exactly.
The whole Owens, like the whole first couple episodes, like I can imagine that was like over, like after all that happened, that was probably months out there. So let's just throw out the 8-week thing because it wasn't 8 weeks. And Carlos, can you imagine getting an annulment in 8 weeks? Yeah, not possible.
No.
No. Anyway. Yeah,
no legal shit passes that fast.
I know.
Right?
Yeah. So yeah. But anyways, let's get on to 411. But that was great news to talk about.
Yep.
So we already start off so interesting because Wyatt introduces Judd and Grace to his girlfriend, and I'm just like, oh great. And so like they're talking about how they met or whatever, and I loved Judd pulling Grace closer with just one hand. It was so cute. And at some point, this whole thing was so weird. This whole scene was so weird. And like it was just very weird. And like I just feel like Wyatt had that look, and Wyatt kept saying like how, he didn't take his midterms, and Judd's like, why the hell not? And it's like he's like, oh, it's because I'm dropping out. And it's just like, just Judd, like any good dad is like,
right,
the hell you're not. No, you're not doing that.
Yeah.
And then Wyatt's like, oh, well, I don't need to go to college for what I want to do. And this is when I had the, oh, God.
Yeah,
And
I knew it was coming.
yeah, same. And Judd's like, well, what's that, be a bum? And Wyatt's like, a firefighter. And I'm like, oh, great. This is Albert all over again.
Albert 2.0. It's not
Albert
going to get
2.0,
any better.
exactly. Yeah, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, now they put that out there. And I feel like, in a sense, I saw this coming, but I also feel like it sort of came out of nowhere just because there were plenty of opportunities for this to have been brought up before last season. There were multiple cases where this could have easily been brought up and it wasn't. So I'm like, I don't know. I don't particularly like this and
I don't like any of it.
I don't either. I don't like any of this scene. Like, I was just like, I could have had Wyatt come back without any of this. Because it gets worse. It gets worse. So then, like, you know, Wyatt's like to Judd, oh, well, can you like put a word in for me to the fire chief? And I'm just like, okay, that's a bit much.
No.
I would be like, no.
I wouldn't do that for someone I wanted to get in. You get in like everybody else.
Exactly.
Right?
Like, it's like, I don't know, just something like stuff like that, like just wanting, I don't know, that stuff gives me like a weird feeling. Like, it's like, really, you think you're so special? I don't know. It's just like, it's kind of but then Joseph's just like, what's the rush? And Wyatt's like saying how his girlfriend Leanne is pregnant, and I'm like, yeah.
Right.
I was like, because people have been speculating this when like a synopsis came out saying that Wyatt had like news or whatever or something to tell Judd and Grace, and I'm like, oh, and people are like, oh my God, this is what's gonna happen. And I was just kind of like, oh my God, please no. And I was like, I was trying not to think about this, and I was just like, oh, here we go. This is such a dumb storyline. And like, for what?
Can I just volunteer that these are two fucking 19-year-olds? And
Okay,
they
when
should
did
not
you
be
turn
talking
19?
only about having a child when you're not even 20.
Yeah. Okay, he
Why
was
are we
literally
acting so cold
17
about
last
this?
season. What the hell happened?
Right.
I guess he may have just been before his 18th birthday.
Probably.
and
That's probably
just
how it
turned
was.
19. Like, that's how they tend to play a lot of those songs. But I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't like this at all.
No, it's so dumb. It's like we're also putting this out for characters that a character that's not even like not even close to a main character. Not even like, you can't even like yes, a guest star, but like, I don't know, it's just not even like a minor character. Like, literally you're on a few episodes, like, and you've only been on the show for a season, and I'm just like, really, why are we could have literally done so much better.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely saw the firefighter thing coming because I knew, like, I remember the end of last season, Wyatt did not want to go to school. Like, he didn't want to go to college. And I remember being there. I didn't want to go to college either. And I remember my dad saying, no, you're going to go. And my mom too. And so I get where Jed's coming from. I get where Wyatt's coming from. But yeah, and then, you know, I guess I had some friends in school that, you know, had kids when they were just out of high school or in high school. So I'm not surprised. I also know this kind of opens up a parallel storyline with Judd, and, you know, because of Wyatt and him not knowing about Wyatt. So yeah, I'm not against the firefighter situation. I'm just really disappointed that they decided to bring a girlfriend. And I mean, I'm fine with the girlfriend. Like, it's cool. Yeah, he's happy. But I was like, really? You had to make her pregnant too?
Exactly.
I'm like, let's not add any more stress on it.
Yeah, like, it just seems pointless.
What's that saying? Babies having babies?
Pretty much. And like, I know people are talking about this before we even saw the episode. People are like, well, it seemed like it was planned. And I'm like, well, that's really stupid to plan something like that when you're literally 19 years old.
Right.
If it is planned, I'm especially gonna smack someone over the head. I'll leave them both, if I'm being honest.
Because I'm like, I'm like, good luck finishing college while you're literally raising a child. Like, people do it, yes, but like, I'm also like, you're literally in the beginning.
Right.
Also, does no one seem to think that Judd could have an issue with this, seeing as he saw his entire firehouse die around him?
Yeah.
You wouldn't want
No one
anybody...
has taken this into consideration.
That's why I figured he freaked out when he said that he didn't.
I felt that too. That's like a lot of parents, like they don't want their kids to go into like that kind of field because of like the loss and stuff like that. And like,
which granted, firefighters don't have the same fatality rates that a lot of, like, so let's say police do. But for one thing, we're at a high increased risk for cancer and nothing else. And shit happens.
Right.
Just because we have lower fatality rates than some doesn't mean we have none.
Right.
And Judd literally lost a dozen of his brothers. And how is he supposed to be okay with his 19-year-old, admittedly soft child doing this?
Right.
Well, yeah, I mean, and blue-collar parents want their children to go to school so they're not in those blue-collar jobs. Not because they're bad jobs, it's because there's more out there.
Right.
And so I can see both sides. I do.
Yeah, well, we're at that. Make sure you stay alive for that child you're supposed to be trying to be involved with.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, don't go into a job you were certainly not suited for.
Yeah, but then we're at the 126 and they're playing Catan and I'm like, okay, what the heck? And I'm like, okay, I was like, you can't play Catan at the firehouse. First of all, Carlos is not here. Second of all, you can't do that.
Right.
It was funny because like a lot of people were commenting on that. They're like, I don't think they should be playing Catan at the firehouse, and I'm like, probably not. I'm like,
that game. If you're playing a really solid game with people who really know what they're doing, it could take hours to play.
Carlos isn't there. You can't do that. Carlos finds out they're playing on him, and he's like, heck, guys, that we're friends. Okay, but then that's quickly I guess stopped because Marjan comes in and she's just like giving them a list of chores because she's on desk duty. Okay, I love somebody finally recovering and not just going right back out there. Like actually recovering and being on desk duty. Like finally, it took long enough. I mean, I get Paul when he had his thing last season. I get he was on desk duty, but we didn't really see much of it. So like we're actually seeing her like actually recover, and it just makes me like I love it and stuff. And like they're all like, we really need to get you back in the field. And Marjan's just like your lips to my therapist ears.
Right.
And and then this is when Mateo gets that call from Marvin in LA, of course, and is showing everyone, and they're all joking. And so it's like Mateo's obviously mentioned Marvin but never showed them. And
they think he's joking. It's like, that's a whole other person.
Yeah, literally. And we were just talking about this before we started recording, but okay, that phone call was so fake.
Yeah, they didn't lay that on well, like, especially the first time you see the image. I think a whole ass editing team could have done better.
Yeah, it was just really not played out well, like, like it literally just looked like they had Jules film like whatever his Marvin scene was for that and just put it on a phone screen. Like it wasn't like there was no like it was just not it did not hit. And I'm just like, yeah, different shows have done this way better, but you know, whatever. But so then Marvin's like to Mateo, oh, like this isn't a social call. So like Mateo goes to talk to him in private and he finds out that Marvin's in trouble. He's in jail. And I'm like, okay, how are we on a FaceTime call when we're literally in jail?
I was wondering the same thing.
I had said this and stuff. I was like, and people were like, well, it's contraband. And I'm like, of course, if anybody's going to have contraband, it's going to be Marvin.
Right.
So I was like, okay, like if we really think about that, that does kind of make sense. But I was just like, dude's in jail. How does he have a phone? Like, okay,
good question.
I was like, okay, way to be realistic. But you know, whatever. So yeah, Marvin needs Mateo's help. He needs to bail him out, and it's $25,000. $25,000. And I'm
because
like,
Marvin's still boosting cars.
Oh my god! Like what happened? I think Athena needed to pay him a visit.
Dude, yes.
Seriously.
Yeah, like
I also like this. Like I have a little bit of bitterness too, simply because it kind of sours the effect of like the whole earthquake and
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that
Yep.
really does. I try not
I
to think
agree.
about it, but like it
huge
really
deal,
does.
but like there was like a lesson taught there, and like we could
Right.
just go on believing he learned something, and
Right.
yeah,
But even
fair
even
enough.
back then, Marvin was pretty cocky about, well, I'm trying to get it all out of my system before I turn 18 and my records are sealed. So,
Well, you're over 18 now, bitch.
yep. Tried as an adult.
I know, like seriously. Yeah, so yeah, that's that for Marvin for now, but of course there'll be more. So then we get this call with the lady who is shot with an arrow. And so
Oh my god.
this was I don't know.
I actually liked this call a little bit.
I liked it, especially like
Yeah.
towards the end and stuff.
Yeah.
So like these
Right.
kids were being kids, throwing a ball and it gets into her yard, and apparently she had enough of this shit, so she had a whole collection of like stuff from
Right.
like them and I'm sure many other kids, and
Yeah.
so she's like, and then she's like basically like my yard, my ball, and so then they have to play with something else because that's their last ball. So they switch to an arrow, which they do not know how to operate. And
Yeah, like
clearly,
you go
because it
from
goes in the
baseball
lady's neck.
to bow and arrow. Okay, that's a big jump.
I
Yeah,
get wondering, like, did they just take the dad's, or was it
Right.
theirs? Or
I kind of had a feeling that it might have been the dad's, but like they've played with it before, but not with no supervision. Like they've definitely had
Right.
supervision before.
And
Like,
the dad
for
was
one
like,
thing,
he's not.
it's a real arrow. No kid's bow has real arrows.
I know the
Right.
way it looked so real. So I was like, that's
Mhm.
definitely not a
And the
photo.
dad comes running out of the house, which kind of made things worse, but like, I get the intent.
Because he was yelling. He was like, ah.
And
And
they distracted them.
Right. And then the dad was like, he's not even a good shot.
Clearly,
That's not
it
helping.
went in her neck. Like, yep, she gets hit in the neck. And so the medics arrive, and Carlos is already there, which I love. Like, yes,
Mhm.
thank
Love
you.
that.
And
Yay.
he's trying to talk the lady down and like calm her down, and
Well, 'cause
they.
she's threatening to sue the neighbor.
I know,
don't
she's like, I'm
blame
gonna
her.
sue you. Blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And then so like they're checking her out, and like it's kind of weird because she's like literally not bleeding. Like there's hardly any blood, and it's literally like basically right on her jugular, so they're kind of just like, what the heck?
And there's no like active sign of damage either. Like there's nothing
Yeah.
abnormal going on in her body. She's literally
Yeah.
just a lady sitting there with an arrow in her neck.
She's literally yelling, and there's an arrow in her neck. Like
Mhm.
And this isn't like adrenaline function.
Right.
Right.
Like the adrenaline would make like bleeding worse. There's no bleeding.
Yeah, there's literally, yeah. So then Tommy like figures like that she has a mass in her neck, and so like that kind of like that's why it wasn't bleeding. But I don't know. When the lady was asking about it, and she was asking if it was cancer, and Tommy's like, probably because of where it is. I don't know, just part of that. I was like, did you really have to say that? Because like my thought is like, why freak out somebody when you don't know.
Right.
You don't actually know.
Right. That's like first rule of like paramedics. It's like, don't quote anything to a patient.
Especially since she's a paramedic captain, not a doctor.
Right.
Yeah, when she was not technically incorrect to say that there's a mass. That's not
Right.
wrong. Terminus cancer, saying that it's most likely. Do not.
Yeah, it's a no-no.
Yep.
Like, just be like, we can't know for sure until like they run tests at the hospital. So we just gotta get you in there, see what it is.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it's
If
just
cancer or
not
something
good.
because that's not saying it's that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But
Because
she's
there
like,
are other reasons for masses.
exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. But she's like, well, really, you should be thanking these boys because basically they saved your life. because
Oh,
you now like found like something you didn't know of and stuff. And then like they're getting Lady to the ambulance and stuff, and then she's like telling Carlos like, officer, like there's a bin of toys in my backyard, make sure these boys like get what's theirs. And like she tells the boys like, make sure everyone from the neighborhood gets like what's theirs. And then she tells them like, next time you hit something in my backyard, to next time and come and get it, and when you do, like, stay for a glass of juice. And I was like, oh, that was sweet.
I actually like that. That
Yeah.
was one of my favorite parts of the episode. I love that.
Yeah, she reminded me of like an old recluse or something, the kind of crotchety old neighbor.
Yes.
And then when she like, and they said, that the kids, the mass, like the arrow was moved like knocked away from the jugular because of the mass.
Right.
So, like, had she not been shot, she may have never found it, because she had said that she didn't go to doctors, like she didn't try to go to doctors anymore. And so, yeah, I was like, that was a really cool way to wrap it up.
Right, it was sweet and stuff. Like, and then like TK and Carlos are standing there, and TK's like, I guess she's not pressing charges, and Carlos is just like, or her luck. And I was like, I love when they get to interact on calls. So like that was like, I loved it because I wasn't necessarily expecting that.
How it started. He's an impressive guy. He's my dad. To all this.
I know.
I love it.
I know Ronan was doing that too. So yeah, I love that. Then we get Owen listening to a Winston Churchill speech, because apparently that's gonna help him prepare for the wedding speech. And I'm like, I don't even want to know.
One thing, honey, Winston Churchill.
I can only imagine.
Antiquated. Also, B, you don't need to listen to like wartime speeches.
I can only imagine the words that's gonna come out of his mouth.
I'm scared.
I low-key scared. But
I need someone to stop him in his tracks before he tries saying and addressing the whole of Europe or some shit.
Right.
Honestly. Yeah, Judd, please. So then Mateo interrupts this by and stuff, because he needs to talk to Owen, obviously, because he has to borrow money. And like Owen's like, oh well, Mateo tells him that it's 25 grand, and Owen's like, oh, so it's not for rent.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I would hope your rent isn't 25 grand for one.
I'll be honest, at this point I forgot they lived together.
Right.
And I just pieced that in this scene. Like, I remember that obviously later on. I didn't remember it as far as this scene went, so like I'm listening to that like, wait a second. they live together. Oh, and what you charge the boy? No wonder you can afford freaking spa days.
Right.
Yeah, and like so like Mateo's like saying how his cousin Marvin's in jail, and he needs that money. And it's like, oh, what did he do? And it's like, oh, he stole a Ferrari. And Mateo's like, he doesn't keep them. And Owen's like, so he's done that before? And Owen's like, does he ask for money a lot? And Mateo says how he's bailed him out 2 to 5 times. And I'm just like, yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And Owen's just like, Mateo, did it ever occur to you that he is a repeat offender because he has someone to pay the bill? And Mateo says how, literally. And Mateo's like, well, he, like, saying how he owes Marvin and his family because he lived with him until he was 16. He's more like a brother than a cousin to him, and he always looked out for Mateo when they were kids. And I was like, I appreciate that, but there's a difference between looking out for someone and enabling bad behavior. Take it from me, the dad of an addict. And like, I guess some people, like somebody was saying, some people like took that the wrong way. And I'm like, I didn't see that as being a bad thing at all. It's honestly, it's the truth.
TK 100% admits that he's an addict. Like that. Anyone who has issues like that, like problems in that regard, like they admit that. And that's what Owen is, the father of an addict.
So yeah, I think I don't know what it was about it. It's like, well, obviously, like there were times that, like, they probably covered for TA, or they probably did stuff for him, or they, whatever it was, and like that was enabling. So like it's just straight up fact. So I don't see anything wrong with that at all.
Yeah.
And he didn't say, yeah, exactly. There was no dig at TK. Like it's just fact. Like, guys, come on.
Yeah, literally. And Owen says like how maybe his cousin needs to learn his lesson this time, and it's like, yeah,
preach.
Yeah.
Like, what is he in his freaking 20s by now?
Right.
Come on.
Yeah. Well, because he would see 1, 2, 3.
Hang on, math ain't mathin'. How old is Mateo again?
We don't know.
He's a baby then, because Marvin was like 17 and a half years old in season 2 of 911.
4 seasons ago. So technically,
4
he would
seasons
be
ago.
21.
21,
22-ish.
I feel like he's either 22 or 23, just because I don't know. Because are we if we're going off of what we know about Marvin, are we assuming him and Mateo are around the same age? Probably.
They'd have to be.
Maybe
a year difference.
What I appreciated about this scene, and I think it kind of goes with that too, is we did find out that Mateo lived with his aunt and uncle and his cousin for since he was really young, because he emigrated from, I think Mateo's mentioned his dad's in Guatemala, so somewhere.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Mateo's not born in the US, and so he lived with his aunt and uncle. So I'm thinking the cousins are pretty close in age. It would make sense.
Yeah, it would make sense.
Especially because we'll talk later as the little thing they showed. They seemed like they shared room, and they were at the same school and within a grade of each other. So that makes me think that Mateo's pretty young. So that would, wow. So then that would put Mateo 18 years old when he was becoming a firefighter.
I don't know. That confuses me a bit, just because he had been trying for so long. It kind of, I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. I just want clarification, please.
Yeah, no, that's a good call. You're right. I do too. Because now like you said, math ain't mathing here.
It really isn't. Please, can we get clarification on how old he is?
Right.
So applicants to be fire cadet must be 18 in Texas. Okay. That is the standard. Volunteer is usually 16. Professional is 18. Right. So yeah, again, math ain't mathin'.
Yeah, especially if you think about the fact that he had been trying and taking that test for literally a while.
Yeah,
so I don't know. Yeah, that is a bit confusing. Because I'm trying to, I have a whole thing going on in my brain right now, and I'm trying to figure it out.
Yep, that's gonna take some laying out of some calendars, and it's okay, do I want to get into this?
I have a feeling rabbit hole still isn't going to math until they actually give us an answer, which is what I want. Don't start digging yourselves out of this hole, because I understand they had just overall, I understand they had to do something with the fact that they reused an actor. They unintentionally dug themselves into that hole, because they didn't know at the time that they were going to use the person who guest starred in technically, I guess, 2 episodes, or as a main star of one of their other series.
Right.
So it's not necessarily their fault. It's just that they had to work with what they're given. I'm not sure they're helping themselves right now. I don't know. It's all weird.
Yeah, it is very much. But
moving on.
Yeah. So then we see Judd very angrily punching a punching bag. And Tommy, sees this, and she's talking to him, and Tommy thinks he's stressed because of having a toddler in the house because of Charlie. And Judd's saying how, oh, this isn't about Charlie. He says this is about my 19-year-old acting like he's a toddler. And I'm oh my god, oh, poor Judd. And Judd's Tommy's is he vandalizing freeway signs again, and Judd's like, no, he got his girlfriend pregnant and he's dropping out of school, and guess what he wants to do? You'll never guess. And Tommy's like, he wants to be a firefighter. And Judd's face is just like, how did you know that? And he's like, oh, so you talked to Grace? And Tommy's like, no. And so like Tommy's like, Wyatt idolizes you. It's not surprising. Like, he's got a great role model. And Judd's like, no. And like Judd doesn't want Wyatt to make the same mistakes he made. And Tommy's like that's not up to you. But Judd says how it is because Wyatt wants him to call the fire chief to get him a spot.
Right.
And that's just like, that's so weird. And Tommy asked Judd like if he could change anything since like the day he met Grace, would he? And Judd's like, no. And Judd's like, Wyatt's not like me. And I'm like, that's true.
It's
Like when we first met him, it was like, oh, he is not like Judd.
Mm-mm.
Like there were those things where you're like, yeah,
Right.
definitely not.
Yeah. I'm glad that Tommy was there for Judd, for him to kind of let off some steam. Yeah, Judd's got a lot of stuff he's got to deal with here in this episode.
Oh yeah, for sure.
like I love Judd and Tommy's support. Like we love them.
Right.
But she can't really help him with this.
Right.
But he's right overall. Because Wyatt's not like him. He's his own person.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this ain't gonna go right.
It wasn't necessary, but it would have been interesting to see Owen talk to him about like the whole falling in footsteps thing, just because TK did that,
Right.
and so he has experience on that.
You know who I would have preferred him to talk to, actually?
Who?
DK himself.
Oh my god, that was so good.
Yeah.
Some perspective, you know?
Yeah,
Because
That's actually very true. Yeah.
I absolutely would have loved an Owen conversation. I would actually love that in the future. But honestly, to get some actual perspective, TK kind of is a logical choice.
That would have been very good.
I missed our Judd and TK interactions. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Come on, give it to us.
No.
We need it.
Oh my god, yeah, we really do. Yeah, that would have been really. Yeah, hopefully they give us something with that.
Hopefully. Please, I'm gonna riot.
Literally.
No, I'm just gonna go riot at Wyatt. Okay. Anyway, we're playing.
Oh my god.
Done.
So then we get Marjan. She's apparently now organizing the cabinets.
Okay. Can I just say, I feel bad for the cabinets because they have been reorganized so many times. Owen has done it. Paul did it last season when he was on desk duty, and now Marjan's doing it, and I'm sure it's been done by Owen at least another time.
I'm sure TK did it at one point on his many stints of, recovery.
Yeah.
I'm sure he did it other places too.
Oh yeah, those cabinets have been through a lot. Like rip for the cabinets, a moment of silence for the cabinets. I love this entire interaction because she almost freaking color coded them, man.
Oh
I
my
know.
gosh, yeah.
Yeah, I just love that. And it's just like, Tamarjan, like, did you organize these? And she's like, and he's like, is this alphabetical order? And she's like, I almost color coded. And Judd's like, I can't even picture that. And I'm like, can you imagine? Yeah, that's
Here's the thing, I would do that.
I would do that too, 100%.
And I love Paul's response. He's like, this is giving me ideas for my house. And Judd's like, let me guess, do you have a label maker? And Paul's like, oh, yeah, and her name's Bonnie.
I love
like,
that.
Like, I have a label maker too, but I sure as heck didn't name it.
That's the stuff I would do. Oh, that reminds me of just so many things. Like we at work, there's this one cart we have at work, and it literally does have a name. Her name's Bertha, and like it's funny because one of my coworkers today was like, "Where the heck is Bertha? Is she on vacation?"
I need to go like name something at my work.
Highly recommend it. It's always funny and it's like everyone knows what you're talking about too. It's just so funny.
So I need to name my workplace's Ghost because I always say that there is insert name of my workplace Ghost round. I'm gonna do that.
Yeah. But then,
anywho, now that Grace is plotting,
but then, of course, Judd gets a visitor. Of course, it's Wyatt, and here we go. Judd basically, like Wyatt's like, "Oh, did you think about what we talked about?" And Judd's like saying how he's not going to be making that call, like he thinks it's a mistake, and Wyatt's like, "It's not," and Judd's like, "I've been where you are," and Wyatt's like, "No, you haven't." He says how Judd wasn't around, but I'm gonna stick around for my kid. I'm gonna raise my kid, and I know you would have done the same if you had the chance. Okay, this kind of annoyed me at first when he brought it up because I'm like,
very much annoyed.
I'm like, he wasn't told about you. He didn't know about you. So like, it's not his fault that he found out 17 years later. Like, yeah, because. Yeah, that was just like, that was a low blow. And like,
right, especially when he tried to backtrack and like, oh wait, I mean, I know you didn't know, and it's like, okay, yeah, you already dug that hole, so let's stop.
You already said it. Yeah, it was just not like, it wasn't fair for like Judd. I get he corrected, but it was like, you still put that out there. Huh?
Yeah, and that guilt trips Judd.
Exactly.
Which it's very manipulative. And I'm not saying who's doing it for that reason. If it was, it may have been more subconscious, but he did.
Exactly.
Yeah, just hated that.
Yeah. And like Wyatt's really bugging him about it, about making the call, and it's
like, you have no confidence you're going to get in on your own like willpower.
Right.
I feel like if Judd did try to make that call, he might just wind up talking him out of being admitted. Like, could put a whole bunch of conditions in of like, well, he needs some toughening up kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. About what he thinks about things. He cannot do something unless he wholeheartedly is actually invested in it.
Right.
Exactly. And like Judd says, like, so he's like, "Oh, I'm not going to be making that call, and like, I'm helping you by like doing that." And he's like, firefighting isn't for you. And Judd says like how he thinks he's not up to it, and he thinks he's too soft, which he for sure is.
Oh hell yeah.
Like, and stuff. And Wyatt's all shocked by that, and I'm like, okay. And Wyatt's just like, "You think I'm soft?" And Judd's like, "For this job, yeah, I do." And it's just a straight, like, that's a fact. And Judd like thinks that because he does take no for an answer, and he wilts anytime there's pressure. We saw that literally last season, and Judd's like, and you get this like hangdog look on your face, like you do right now. And like anytime anything gets a little bit tough, you always come running out with your tail tucked in between your legs. And like, this job isn't like that. There's no do-overs here. And Judd says like, like, he basically says no, and Wyatt storms out, and Judd's like, point proven, basically.
I have to give Judd props here, because a lot of people, men in that situation, would probably bend over backwards to do anything this child that they just found out about for them. And he's still standing his ground, because it's how passionate he is about not wanting him to follow in his footsteps in that way right now. And I'm like, go Judd for like standing up and saying, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to just let you do this. I want you to have a better life. So it could have easily gone the other way, and I'm glad it didn't, because they needed to have this tough conversation.
Right, yeah. Like, any good parent wouldn't let their kid, like, go into something or give them bad advice, which I feel like if Judd, did all the things Wyatt wanted him to do, that would be giving him, like, setting him up for failure, basically.
Yeah, he's sticking his guns on this, because he's doing what he believes, and I don't disagree with him. Like, he's not only right, but he's sticking by it.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, hell yeah, don't let yourself get railroaded.
Right.
If your kid is that determined to get into a job that's not all that suited for him, he can make his own way.
Right, because he'll figure out eventually that, like, you know, that this is probably not like the best decision.
Yeah.
Or he'll surprise everybody and like do great at the job. If so, more power to him. But like,
yeah, for sure. So then we see Mateo selling his Pokemon cards to get bail money for Marvin, and I'm just like, okay, this is where we are at. Okay, got like 900 for one, and then he was trying to get the rest of the money, and he's like, oh, well, I can sell this one, but it was like his favorite, and he's like, don't do that. And so she literally sends him like $24,000, and I'm just like,
I was like, thanks for
you had that
enabling
lying
him.
around.
Yeah,
How old are
I'm
you?
like, hashtag random.
it was so weird to hear, like,
It was.
for her to have like that much money. Like, she's like, oh, but I've been saving and stuff. Okay, like, I don't know. This is just me. Like, right now, I was like, okay, so we think he's like very young, but like, how old is she? Because she's like, oh, I've been saving money for a long time, and I'm just like,
He's definitely older than him.
a lot, yeah.
Oh yeah.
A little
Like,
bit
I'm not
older.
saying that's like a drastic age difference, but she's definitely older than him.
Oh, yeah. It's just very interesting because she's like, yeah, and she's like, well, it's a loan, and I expect interest. Like, okay, well, at least there's that. At least she's not
Right.
just expecting him to like not
Yeah.
to like literally take that as a gift. And I'm like, okay, that's at least something.
Yeah.
So I feel like Mateo was definitely falling into the guilt category of doing things because he feels guilty about something that happened in their past. Obviously, we'll find out later what it is, but I'm like Owen said, by continually bailing him out, it's only enabling him to continue doing that. And he obviously hasn't gotten help for it. And so
Right.
I just like, okay, your girlfriend literally just gave you 25 grand and 24, whatever it was. And first off, I didn't know that Venmo, you could do that in one transaction per day. Like, I would imagine there's a limit, but that's a whole nother story.
Definitely is.
I was like, wow.
I think you probably have to do it in increments.
Yeah, I'd imagine so.
Obviously, for the show, they're just gonna say she gave him $24,000.
Yeah, but yeah, I can definitely see him. He's, Mateo's definitely feeling guilty, so he's like, I don't care, I'm just gonna do it. And then I've seen it happen with other people, like bend over backwards to give money to people continually, and some people finally like catch on, like, okay, this person is not the right resource to give on, but other people are like, yeah, I'll help you out. I mean, and I'm grateful for the people who've helped me out, but I've made what I've been helped out with, either paid it back or, done what I was supposed to do with it and never gotten back in that situation again. And I feel like Marvin is definitely kind of leaning on all of a sudden Mateo's feeling guilty emotions.
Yeah, like I have no idea if he actually intended to be like this, but like with most situations, I'd be like, he's definitely playing on the guilt. Like I would expect like coercion out of something like this.
Right.
Oh, for sure. I don't know if that's what's happening, but yeah.
Yeah, it would have been. I don't know. I really don't know.
I don't know either.
But yeah, that was something. So Judd's in the middle of the night fixing something that apparently Grace had been bugging him to fix for the past 4 years. He's like, well, you've been complaining about these cabinet doors. She's like, yeah, only for like the past 4 years and stuff. And so she's just like, okay, what is this actually about? And so Judd tells her how like Wyatt stopped by today, and he was bugging him about making that call to the chief, and Judd told him no, and because he is too soft. And Grace is like, I see. And Judd's like, you should have seen his face. And Judd's like saying how like, I take it back. And Grace is like, the only reason you would do that is if you actually didn't mean it. So if you meant it. And Judd's like, well, I did, but like Judd's like saying like, he's wonderful and I think the world of him, that, but like not everyone is built for this. And it's like, it's true.
Yeah.
That's damn true.
And Grace is like, well, I guess that's for him to find out for himself, isn't it? Which is true. You should find that out for yourself because it could only go one of two ways. It either goes very well and it's like, wow, like this is definitely it, or like, man, what the heck did I do?
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and like Judd says how he's not stopping it, but Grace is like, "You're not helping either." And Judd says how he just doesn't feel good about calling the chief and telling him something that Judd doesn't believe, which is fair. Like, I even if he did believe in it, I'm like calling the chief because like it's his like this is a backup plan, so it's also kind of sort of his own damn fault because you literally this is a backup plan and the classes start like the next week. Like
Right.
what do you think was gonna happen? Also think about like there's wait lists all the time for stuff like this.
Right.
Think about all the people on the wait list that
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
desperately also wanted this and they're waiting.
Right. Yep.
Like that's just so like it's just unfair to like other people. Like it's just kind of thinking about yourself, I guess. That's how I see it at least.
See, someone I know had a similar situation long time ago. It's an old story, but basically, the daughter wanted to marry a kind of good for nothing guy who was about to fail out of like a military academy,
Mm-hmm.
and her father literally, who was military, had connections, literally made sure the guy graduated simply so his daughter would have a life.
Wow.
That turned out terribly, but like. Regardless, yeah, that's what this reminds me of.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And like Grace had said, like, that like Judge should get there because it's his job to, as Wyatt's dad, to help him toughen up. And it's like,
Mhm.
that's true.
Yeah.
And Judd says how like he's gonna hate him, and Grace is just like oh, she was basically just saying like, yeah, me and him both, like if you keep me up any longer, like can we go to bed now?
Oh yeah, that's cute.
It's like yeah, because he was literally making so much noise fixing that damn cabinet in the middle of the night. If that was me, I'd be like, what the hell are you doing?
That's all.
Mhm.
I'm also thinking of like TK at 3:00 in the morning proposing to Carlos because he just couldn't sleep because he was up thinking about his will. Now Judd's up all night working on cabinets because just
All
like
our-
Grace, like Carlos, you couldn't have waited till in the morning. Yeah.
All our top tier couples literally had
Yes.
the best in the middle of the night scene.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. And like just looking at her as she walks away, and he has a look, and she's just like, "What?" And Judd's like, "I think you might be the wisest woman I ever met." And Grace is just like, "Okay, I'll try not to be offended by that, but thank you." And he also says she's gonna be the finest grandma, and I'm like, "Oh dear God, you
Do
did
not
not
go there, dude.
And Grace is just like, "Excuse me, you did not call me grandma. No, you didn't." And Jed's just like, "What do you want to be called, Granny, Mima?" And Grace is just like, "Keep that up and you'll be sleeping on the couch
Yeah, I think she said
as you
sleep.
should."
Yes, keep going on that, Grandpa. I sleep on the couch. That's so good. I love those two.
That's so weird. Like, it's very strange.
Mm.
It's just, I don't know. It's, yeah. So then we see Marjan, and she has a clipboard. And in my head, I was like, do not give Buck a clipboard. Who gave Buck a clipboard?
Right?
Don't give Marjan a clipboard.
Yeah.
I guess that's what they're gonna be saying after she's done with Destiny. They're gonna be like, "Okay, you're never getting hurt again. You're never gonna get a clipboard again. This is not happening." And she's like saying how she wants dinner to be on the table at like a certain time, and she's like saying she's like giving them all tasks for dinner, like and stuff. And I looked Owen being like, "We really need to get her back out of the fields," and stuff like that. Was just like, yeah, they're clearly sick of her. But then this quickly ends because Mateo gets a call from Marvin, and he's like, "Oh, like you're out," and then but it's his cousin Daniela, which obviously would have been Marvin's sister. And like I'm like, okay, this is not good. And poor Mateo, we find out Marvin was killed. Like he had only been out of jail for like 2 hours, and Mateo's like feels so guilty. He feels like it's his fault and stuff. And then like Mateo goes home early because of all this, and he's drinking. And don't you know, he trips and he hits his head. And I'm like, well, that's great. When I was watching him drink, I was just like, oh dear God, this is not going to end well.
Right.
Like I was like, yeah, because then he kept going and going and going, and I'm like, oh
Yeah.
no, Mateo, sweetie, no.
Well, it was all because he didn't want to call his aunt and uncle. Because apparently, like, he didn't want to call them and tell them what happened to Marvin.
Also, I'm really confused because if it was his cousin Daniela, then wouldn't
Yeah, so why
she
didn't
tell their
she tell
parents?
them? That's what I was wondering too.
I kind of thought the same thing. Like he called him, so I assumed like the other family probably knew. I don't know. That was a little like interesting.
Yeah, like why would that be on Mateo? Did he feel what? I guess kind of what I took from that was he felt obligated to tell them that like he'd posted the bail. But I also got the impression that he was saying that he had to break the news of the death, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that's not what.
I feel like it was probably something he put on himself because he felt like because he got him bailed out, that it was his responsibility because he was the reason that he was even out there.
Because if he hadn't have bailed him out, he wouldn't have died. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that was interesting. But then we get this weird dream, whatever you want to go, dream sequence, alternate reality, whatever you want to call it. And I gotta say, when they like released the Jingle sneak peek, I was like, "What the hell am I watching? What the hell is going on?" And I was being totally serious because I was like posting, and I was like, I swear, if this whole episode is this, I'm literally gonna turn it off. I was like, you guys think I'm kidding? I'm actually not. Like, I'm being totally dead serious. This will be the first episode I will actually turn it off.
Right.
Because I was just like, what is happening? And I was like, because like when I watched the sneak peek, I was like, okay, I don't know if I like this. I'm like, I kind of hate this, and I'm like, I kind of think this is so stupid. But like, moving on. So yeah, we get this weird sitcom. Like I literally feel like we were just like submitted in like a '90s sitcom.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
More like a 70s, but
70s, yeah. I get both, but yeah, literally. So we have Mateo and Marvin in this like it feels like an alternate universe just because like the views I feel like are a little switched because Mateo is this bad kid, but like Marvin is like so goody in this time.
Right.
And like that's just weird to think about. And I don't know, when I was thinking about it, I was like, I don't know if I find this to be believable. Like it's just kind of odd. I don't know, it's kind of weird to think of Mateo as a bad kid because I always feel like they try to give him like a goody personality. It's just I don't know, it's weird.
I think it's weird because it's the same damn person, just playing two different roles.
Right.
And also, we didn't see a transition era. Like I was telling you guys before we started recording, we didn't see a transition era for like Mateo. We didn't see him like go through the grief, go through the remorse. Like, so seeing the flip flop like this is just kind of weird.
Yeah, like we didn't really get any warning to things, and we just don't really know much about his background in general to like know like what life was like then. So it's kind of weird. Yeah. So and then we see Mateo crawl back through the window with like spray paint in his hands, and he apparently burned his middle school down. And so we have Mateo and Marvin, and then we have like all the other characters basically playing the different family members. So we have Marjan as Daniela, we have Tommy as Aunt Marisol, we have Owen as Uncle O, and then Judd shows up as the milkman.
I died.
I died too. That was so funny.
Yeah.
And then we have this whole like spray paint thing and like the school burning down, and then the officers showing up, and the officers are literally TK and Carlos. But I loved Daniela's line that was like, is that the dreamy Officer Reyes and his nincompoop sidekick? And you think if I confess they'll take me away in handcuffs?
I'm like, you and the fandom, girl, you and the fandom.
I loved Aunt Marisol being like, Danielle.
Like slapping her with the towel.
Literally. And And then I loved another one in this sequence that I loved was Uncle O asking if they want French toast, and TK in the alternate universe, TK is like, "Why, yes, we would," and Officer Ray is, "No, we wouldn't," and alternate TK is like, "No, we wouldn't."
No, we wouldn't.
Right.
Said,
Well,
okay, if they didn't
yeah.
show up, I would have hated this whole thing. Like,
Right.
if it just had been like the normal family, I would have been like, okay, this is so stupid. Like, what the point is?
Right.
And like, all we're really missing is like alternate Paul and alternate Nancy.
Yeah. It at least Ronan's tweet made sense after some of this Dreams Weekends was posted. I think he posted something like somebody had asked if Tarlos was together in this universe, and he says yes ... and like there was no like confirmation, like because I think they had asked if they were still engaged.
Oh, people were asking that before, like before the episode even aired, so it had nothing to do with after. People were like, are they going to be there? And he's like, yes.
Yes ... So like he didn't clarify how they were going to be there.
Yeah,
like, okay, that makes sense now.
Yeah, and like honestly, like I didn't know how big this like alternate universe was going to be, because before the episode aired, I was like kind of scared that it was going to be like half the episode. I'm like, oh dear, because I've had shows like literally do episodes that are like full in black and white, and I'm like, that was the whole episode, and I was like, okay, but it was. I will say I liked it more than I thought I would, which a lot of people have been saying that. A lot of people are like, I thought I was going to hate it, but I actually liked it more than I thought.
Here's the thing with me. For one thing, I adore like older shows. Mm-hmm. So like this kind of show, like I find funny. I don't take it too seriously. I like it. So like this was an actual show, I probably like it. Also, I got super into this concept when I watched WandaVision. I'm not going to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen WandaVision, but it employs some similar techniques as this. And ever since then, I've just kind of been a sucker for this kind of sequence. So I actually, probably one of my favorite bits of the episode, if I'm being honest, just for me on a personal level, because it's funny. And it employed a very interesting technique to tell the story of what actually happened in the childhood.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was very interesting. I don't know how much I want to say.
I want to know. I want
to know.
Yeah, Grace and I want to know.
I felt like this was a very, stupid way to explain his history. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I would like to think that we respect the characters a little more than that. And I get that his brain, like, he's knocked out, so he's not like thinking clearly, he's drunk. So like he's just like manifesting this in his head, and he's using people in his current life to like depict people that was in his past. But it's like, it's writers not 101. Like, you don't like write an entire book and then at the end say, oh, by the way, this was all a dream. Like, you just don't do that. Like, that's just bad etiquette. And so I just, coming from a writing standpoint, I think it was not the greatest choice to do this. Like, I'm glad we learned more about Mateo, like finding out about him being, living with his aunt and uncle because he came from another country. So he wasn't born in the US. And so we, learning that Marvin had kind of taken the rap for something that Mateo had done, just to protect him, because he didn't want to be, deported. Because that was kind of always the threat, is if he did something wrong, he'd be deported.
Right.
And so I just like, wow, of all the things they could have done, this is what they came up with. And I'm like, wow. I wasn't a fan. But I'm glad we got the information out of it. I just wish they would have maybe given it to us a slightly different way.
Perspective.
Oh yeah, for sure. You know what this actually reminds me of? It reminds me of Buck's coma dream a little bit, just because we had so many there was just like, because we got literally cracked out Bobby in that, and I know we'll talk about this episode eventually, but like that's what it sort of reminds me of, because that was literally in his head. So like I kind of get that. I don't know. It was funny. Yeah. But if they did this every episode, I'd be pissed.
Right.
yeah.
And I was thinking about that too. Like, I was like, okay, well, if I say that about Mateo's head, then I need to say something like that about Bugs. And I know we'll talk about it. And I wasn't a huge fan of some of the scenes, but I feel like in that one, it was a little more realistic because most of the people were playing similar roles. It was not current cast members playing a completely different character just to manifest the
it was an alternate universe, basically. It was an AU. Buckstream was an AU. Mateo's manifestation. I don't know how else to put it. It was just a different way. Again, I personally like this, even though I can see and agree with some of your
for sure.
I see and agree. I almost feel like I would have liked this technique used for like telling another kind of story. I'm not sure I necessarily like. It's fine for telling Mateo's story, but I almost wish they had like employed this at another point.
Yeah.
Like I love the technique, and that's part of why I love I love this kind of thing. That's why I love this scene.
Yeah, I think if the context had been slightly different, it might have been maybe hit a little differently.
Right.
I also feel like we were just thrust into a situation with little knowledge, and we're kind of brought up to speed like boom.
Right.
Which can work, but not all the time. So there were storytelling geniuses in this episode, at least in my opinion, but there were also some flaws.
Yeah.
Right.
And that might have been one of them.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. The writers had like a weird line to tread on this. I'm not sure they aced everything. Well, they definitely didn't ace everything.
They got the information out there.
They did.
I just think the execution could have been slightly different. And I feel like I was like, okay, was this supposed to be like lightening of the mood of the fact that Marvin is now dead? Or was this supposed to be just because Mateo is kind of the quirky, kooky little younger brother to most everybody in the firehouse that, that's how his brain works? I don't know. But yeah, so
I think they were trying. I feel like they were trying, and for one thing, this felt like an exercise. Like the writers were experimenting with something. Also, the only other way to have gotten this information other than like a realistic flashback, which also would have been extremely heavy, would have been to have had Mateo tell somebody another heavy scene. So you would have had learning of Marvin's death, the drinking, because I'm sure they would have kept the drinking in there regardless, which I think is not a great way to cope, but it's a realistic way to cope. And
a lot of people cope, but
heavy conversation or extremely heavy flashback.
Oh yeah,
it just would have been heavy, with like some hope at the end. But that's something we see all the time. Like that is a common way of storytelling. It's a good way of storytelling, but I feel like they just wanted to experiment, and they may evolve that. Maybe it depends on your perspective.
Yeah, I know a lot of people like weren't expecting to like it and liked it. There were some people that didn't like it. I guess I don't know. It's interesting to hear how different people feel because I went in an episode thinking I was gonna hate it completely. I like this is gonna be stupid, but like it wasn't, and I think if they didn't like include certain people in it, I think it would have been like worse. I don't know. I think it's amusing just because we're seeing like all these different people like playing different people, and it's interesting because we normally like Tommy is very serious, like so to see like Goofy or even we get like a different perspective, so I guess that's like sort of why I sort of liked it in a way too.
Yeah, and I mean there's been times shows have done it. Like I remember watching a show where a current teenager, like current present day, was talking to somebody that was older, and the older person was explaining some history. And so the younger kid, like the teenager's brain, all of a sudden thought back to that time and kind of was picturing it using his friends and him as like the characters in this story this guy was telling him. And they did it really well, but I just, this could have been slightly different. I don't know. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, it's been done. I just feel like it could have been executed a little differently.
Oh yeah, I definitely don't want to see this again though. It was I liked it a lot, but like to see it again, I'm just like, we kind of been there before. It just wouldn't hit is good. Like, it would be good this time, but then it wouldn't be good the next time. But then after all this is over, Mateo is waking up, and then he's talking to Nancy and Owen. Mateo keeps talking about how he needs to go to the police station because Marvin took the fall for Mateo when he did all this stuff, and like he I don't like part of the story is like hard to believe because I'm like it's a little out there, but I'm also like whatever. But like, so he keeps saying how he needs to go to the station, so Owen agrees to take him and stuff. And we don't get the rest of this now, but we get it in like a little bit. So Judd has Wyatt over, and like Judd wants like basically talk about how they left things and he tells them how him and Grace are willing to help out him and Leanne for a while, at least until he graduates from the fire academy. He doesn't know that he is literally going to be there literally in a week, but you know. And Wyatt's just like, I thought you said I was soft, and Judd's like, you are, but like if we set aside some time to train, we can toughen you up. And Judd's like, I'll personally train you myself. And Wyatt reveals, he's starting next week, and he like talked to the chief himself, and he didn't take no for an answer. And so Judd gives Wyatt some clothes, and they're gonna train, and it's just like, oh, okay, we're doing this,
right? I'm like, amen. Yeah, let Judd step up as dad, and I'm looking forward to seeing where this goes.
Yeah, I'm interested, and there was an interview of Jim that came out after this episode aired, which was really good. It was really really good, and he said he's not going to be in, like, Wyatt's not going to be in the season until like the very, very end, and I'm like, okay. Yeah, it was actually funny in that interview. Jim said how Sierra will literally roll her eyes at this, but the twin boys that play Charlie actually like they like him better. And I was like, that was so funny. The way he said it is like, he's like, yes, Sierra will hate this, but they actually like their TV daddy more.
Aww.
It was so funny. So then we get Owen taking Mateo to a station, but we show up at the 126. Who knew? And Mateo's like, what are we doing here? And Owen's like, I told you I was taking you to the station. And Mateo's like, the police station. And Owen makes so many good points in the scene, because he's like, like, this is how you make things right. Like, you have been doing, just by doing what you've been doing, you come here every day, you try to save someone, and you do it because you couldn't save Marvin. And Mateo says how it's not the same, but Owen's like you're confessing to a crime that's 10 years old and already paid for by Marvin, and he did it for you. Like, don't throw away his sacrifice. Like, your work here is important. It's important to me, and it's important to everyone else, and I don't want to lose you. And Mateo's like, thank you. And Owen was like, you bet, son. And that was so sweet.
Yeah.
I loved that. Like, honestly, one of my favorite Owen scenes, maybe, of like the season. At least, definitely sweet. One of my favorite Owen and Mateo interaction scenes ever.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure, for that one. Yeah. It was super sweet.
Right. Yeah, I liked it. I think it was what Mateo needed. And I feel like Owen's right. Do I agree with people going away to prison for things they didn't commit or do? But I know Mateo had said that like Marvin was a completely different person before he went to juvie, and then when he came back from juvie, he was a total 180. So I get why Mateo was concerned and like wanting to like tell his side of the story for real and not. But like even Nancy said, like the statute of limitations on some of that stuff might not even be 5 years. So what is him confessing to something actually going to do?
At that point, it just negates what Marvin did.
Right.
At that point, what's his legacy? I don't know in life.
Right.
Like, that's not the right word, but
yeah. So I'm like, I'm really glad Owen did what he did, because I feel like that's what every day that Mateo saves a life or helps save a life, he's making what Marvin did worthwhile.
Right,
in a way.
exactly.
I mean, I wish Marvin hadn't passed away, but
I know, that was so sad. It was like, oh, we're
Yeah.
really doing this. Okay. Yeah. Like they had, I guess I understand because they had to close the chapter. I mean, did you? No. But like, I get it.
I mean, it's not like they don't know how to get a hold of the actor who played Marvin.
Well, I get it because I don't know, I guess they wanted to close the storyline and just be like, okay, like we're not, because then I think people would have been like, ooh, when's Marvin gonna come back next?
Exactly.
So, like,
That's
so
why I
I-
think they did it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
probably why they did it. Exactly. It was funny because one of my friends the other day was like, so they're not even gonna bring up the fact that literally, like Tim was also in that one before Lone Star, and I'm like, well, he
Oh, yeah.
dead, so there's nothing
Right.
really
The
to talk
runaway
about.
girl.
But yeah, but then we end on Judd training Wyatt. He's like in his truck, and Wyatt's running, following him, and I'm just like, that was kind of sweet. All in all, I liked this episode. I don't know. I wasn't really sure because honestly, we didn't know like half of the stuff that was gonna happen. Like we didn't know like it was gonna be this, but I don't know. I liked it. It wasn't like I don't know. I did like it. It wasn't like necessarily like I'm not gonna like literally be like, oh my god, I gotta watch this all the time. But like I'm not gonna be like it was bad. It was pretty good.
Yeah, like I don't really agree with that. Like I like this episode. Is it a favorite? No. There are much better episodes out there. But like it's not bad. It had its faults. It's not bad.
I wasn't a fan of some of the kooky storyline with the whole like alternate universe thing. But I love the Jed and Grace scenes. I love the Wyatt scenes. I'm glad we got Wyatt back because we haven't seen him this whole season. I mean, I love Grace and Jed anyways, and I would have liked to see more Talos, but like it's okay. Like I don't know. There was good content, and I'm glad we got backstory on Mateo because he's one of the characters we haven't gotten a lot on. So I'm glad we got it. I just wish it could have been gotten a little different way. I think that's the best way for me to say it.
Honestly, the
Yeah.
most I didn't like in this episode had to do with Wyatt.
Agreed.
I'm not.
I don't
happy
like
that
any
his
of that
girlfriend's
storyline.
pregnant.
I think that's
I'm not
stupidest
happy with how he
storyline ever.
acted or how he
No.
thought on himself half of it. I'm like, bro, when did you grow up into an asshole young adult from like being
Entitled.
entitled young adult? You were a sweet teenager. You actually acted like a semi-well-adjusted teenager. That is weird.
Yeah, it really is.
Adult.
Yeah, that honestly would be my only thing I did not like about the episode was like, the things that are brought up with why I'm just like, oh yeah, okay. But all in all, it was still pretty good episode. So before we get into anything else, let's talk about fan thoughts. It was interesting hearing what people had to say about this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting. I liked seeing Tarlos on a call together. I enjoyed the sitcom more than I thought I would. Honestly, I agree. Episode was actually very, very sad. Okay, I didn't think it was sad, but okay. The sitcom stuff was incorporated super well, and the transition from the sitcom to the horrifying reality was very well done. I loved the Tommy Judd conversation, and the episode had a very interesting theme. That's for sure. I don't know. I didn't think it was sad. I feel like if they took the sitcom out, it would have been very sad, though. I liked it. I just wish TK and Carlos would have kissed. Okay, I don't like hearing these comments, and I did post sort of something like this on my Instagram story today, and people are like, okay, I agree with you. I'm like, okay, we don't need to see them kiss like every episode. And like it's actually more realistic that they don't.
Yeah. TK and Carlos are both very professional in their job, and while they can banter with each other, they're not going to risk their job and PDA issues on the job to kiss each other.
I don't know where they wanted to kiss. I don't know if it was that scene or if they just wish there was one in there, but I'm like, that wasn't
Like,
really
I'm sorry, during the
necessary.
sitcom scene, do you want them to start passionately making out in the background? Like, what do you...
That would have made it worse. Like, we all would have hated that. I'm sorry, I love them, but like, that is not the time and place.
Right.
Loved hot Officer Reyes and his nincompoop sidekick. I'm like, yeah, we all did.
Yeah, that was cute.
Yeah, that's it for this week. But I loved all the
Yeah.
But now we have the promo, and I've got to be honest, the promos this season have not hit as well as they have in previous seasons. They've been like pretty bad. They're just like not it, and I'm like, it's. I hope we get better soon. But
Right.
we see a car driving, and there's like a sharp turn, and apparently manure covers the whole car. And Paul's just like, is that manure? And Owen's like, yep. And then he's like, Mr. and Mrs. Gerald, as I live and breathe. And I'm like, why are they back?
Oh my god.
I didn't even realize it was
In
them.
this episode?
What?
Did they get killed off in this episode?
Oh god.
Sorry, that's just my
Probably not.
psyche.
All
But
right.
like, I was just like, I didn't realize it was them until people were commenting on it after the promo had like aired. I'm like, oh my god, it is them. I didn't really connect these things because honestly, this promo was so boring. I didn't even pay attention to it. I just watched it later,
Right.
and like, okay, this is total karma like, for them. And honestly, if this is the only reason they bring them back, I'm in support for it for our girl Marjan.
Yeah. I kind of feel like if I was Marjan and this came up, I would totally be like, yeah, I'm not touching this case at all. I'm going to go sit in the truck.
Yeah, well, honestly, I don't think she's gonna be there because I think she's still recovering.
Probably.
Because I know we're getting like other things of her in this episode, and I know that was mentioned. But then we see a woman on a rampage crashing something into a motel where her husband is apparently there with another woman, and we see Carlos like telling them about all this, and I'm like, yes, Officer Reyes doing his job.
I love it.
And then Owen's just like, oh, 126, let's move before this whole thing comes down.
Yeah.
And yeah, there was basically nothing here. Like I even tweeted, I was like apparently like the Tarlos wedding finished, whatever the wedding stuff, like who's gonna officiate their wedding is supposedly gonna be in this episode, and I'm like, where is that? Because that wasn't in the promo at all.
Yeah.
I'm also very confused at what is happening on what episode, because literally they've been moving around the
Right.
titles and stuff, and I know Tim said it doesn't matter like what the number, like don't pay attention to any of the numbers or the titles because literally they film out of order anyways, and it doesn't really
Right.
matter. But I'm also like, I don't know, it's just too many things are being flip-flopped, and I just want to, and Tim did say that like the Tarlos stuff will be in this episode, and like I trust him, he would know, but I'm also like, what if it's not?
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Right.
Yeah, but I don't know. If we are getting the Carlos stuff, I'm excited for this episode. If not, I don't. And I know Marjan's dating in this episode, so like I'm really excited to see that.
Oh, I want to see this so much.
Yeah. Like when that was mentioned in one of the synopsis, I was like, oh my god, yes. Like, cause like I was like, we got like a fiance in the past. It was like an arranged marriage, and I was just like, that
Right.
was literally like so random. Like, where did that come from? So I'm excited to like see that, and I know Natasha's boyfriend's gonna be in this episode too as her physical therapist.
Yeah. That's
I
awesome
saw
that they were able to get him.
I know, that's so cool. And everyone's like, what if she ends up dating him? And I'm like, I don't think that's gonna happen.
No, we'll see.
We'll see what happens. I mean, it would be like very Lone Star to do something like that.
Yeah.
And in this case, I would support it. But yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it is going to be weird to have things flopping around, but like you said, it's they film out of order, and they may do like a bunch of Tarlos episodes all in one day that like are in the next 3 episodes. So yeah, I'm like, I just am excited for it to be back. And
Honestly,
I'm
this
glad
is
we're
why-
getting it, And yeah.
Honestly, this is why I'm glad I don't like follow the promos or anything. I have no expectations.
See, I literally consume everything that's put out there.
I know.
I feel like it's sort of like my duty because otherwise I would be asked about it a million times and stuff. And it's just what I do. So I'm always like posting about everything. You know, it's just it's a fun time. But yeah, I don't have anything else to say.
No, either.
Okay, great. Thank you guys so much for joining us and listening. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on Anchor. We're also on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts, and anywhere you can get your podcasts. On iTunes and Spotify, please rate us and leave us a review. It would mean a lot to us. You guys can follow the podcast on our socials at 91 Ellis Roundup on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram and TikTok. Be sure to also chat with us on our Discord server. It's a lot of fun over there. The link is in the description of this podcast and also in our Instagram bio. You guys can follow me, Katie, I Love Tarlos on Instagram and TikTok.
You guys can follow me, Grace, at RonanRappa911 on Instagram and at SheepGirl31 on Twitter.
You can find me, EJ, at EJ8302 on Instagram and Twitter. Bye.
Bye.